Faker Hawks, how are you guys doing today? Let's read a few more chapters from Wishtree, shall we? Just wanted to let you know this is my last week at Huffaker. Well, virtually at Huffaker. Mrs. Perez will return on Monday. I have so enjoyed our classes together and even these videos. They've been super fun and I see you guys watching them and I really appreciate it. So I'm gonna do this video and then one more, and then my kids and we're gonna do the Wishtree thing, you guys, and I hope you can join us by writing your wish on a piece of paper or a ribbon and tying it to a branch or a tree. You know, maybe one in your backyard, or maybe if you find a branch as you're walking to the mailbox or walking your pet around, your dog around, that would be awesome. So let's start with chapter 32, shall we? The years passed, and Maeve became as connected to the neighborhood as I was. Even as newcomers from other lands added their music and food and language to our little part of the world. No matter where people came from, Maeve cared for them as best she could. I grew tougher, my older limbs became less pliable, my shadow longer, more trees and shrubs joined me, and there was plenty of sun for all of us, and we never wanted for water. I'd hosted many families by then, mice and chipmunks in particular. My closest confidant was a young gray squirrel named Squibbles. All squirrel names begin with S-Q-U. Squibbles was especially fond of Maeve, who often fed the squirrel table scraps. Privately, Squibbles and I worried about Maeve. Along the way, Maeve had seen a suitor or two, but nothing much came of those flirtations. She had friends aplenty and work to do from dawn till dusk. Still, she seemed lonely. Sometimes Maeve would sit on the porch steps watching happy families stroll past, and her eyes would well up with tears. At night, she'd gaze out an open upstairs window, and her sighs would float to us on the breeze, melancholy, like the call of a mourning dove. Often, Maeve would sit at the base of my trunk and write in her journal. Now and then, she'd read passages aloud. She spoke about the Irish countryside fading into fog. She spoke about her family she'd lost. She spoke about her secret hopes and fears and longings. She had love to give and no one to give it to. Maeve adored early mornings. When the world was bathed in mist and the sun was still a promise, she would lean against my trunk and close her eyes and hum a tune from her childhood. One day, the first day of May, Maeve joined me at dawn. To my surprise, she reached up to my lowest bough and gently tied a scrap of blue striped fabric in a careful knot. "I wish," she whispered, "for someone to love with all my heart." That was my first wish, and the beginning of many more. Chapter 33. As the weeks passed, the piece of fabric on my branch drew many comments. Some of the folks in our neighborhood, the ones from Ireland, would nod knowingly and smile. To them, Maeve would simply say in her lilting voice, "That's my raggy tree. She's not a hawthorn, but she'll do just fine." People who'd come here from other lands, and there were many of them, would frown at the rag or even reach up to remove it. Maeve would warn, "Don't you be touching my wish now." Patiently, again and again, she would explain how in her old home leaving wishes on a raggy tree was a time-honed tradition. Now and then, people would ask Maeve what she wished for. She'd tell them the truth with a sigh and a wry smile. "Nothing much, just someone to love with all my heart." Nothing much at all. Sometimes people would laugh, sometimes they would roll their eyes. "A wish on a rag won't bring you love, dearie," they would say. But usually, people gave Maeve a kind smile, a squeeze on the arm, and a knowing nod. And then they too would ask if they could add a wish of their own. Another year passed. Chapter 34. As May neared, I found myself hosting more scraps of fabric than budding leaves. Squibbles tried to steal a few fabric scraps to line his dray, the nest made of leaves and twigs high in one of my forked branches. I explained he'd have to stick with moss and pine needles until the 1st of May. Wishes, according to Maeve, could not be touched until after May Day. The ones that weren't carried off in the wind or dragged to the ground by the rain could be removed by people or by enterprising squirrels. I suspect she made up that rule for my benefit, so I could grow unfettered without the weight of wet rags dragging me down. Just before dawn on the 1st of May, a young woman approached me. She had dark wavy hair and wore a tattered gray coat. In her arms was wrapped a bundle. "Psst," Squibbles whispered to me. "Here comes another wish, Red." But Squibbles was wrong. There was no wish. Swiftly, but with great care, the girl placed her bundle in my hollow. "A thank you for Maeve," I realized. "A loaf of bread, perhaps?" The girl had probably been one of her patients. She was gone as quickly as she'd come. Like a hummingbird, I thought. Then, not there. Like a gust of wind. Chapter 35. Just a few minutes later, Maeve opened the door of the little brown house. She smiled at me and the scraps waving in the early morning breeze, and then came to cry. Oh, and then came the cry. Wail was more like it, coming from me. Not the meek peep of a wren chick, not the shy squeak of a mouse pup, this was a cry of righteous indignation. This was a baby. Chapter 36. The baby had a note attached to the blanket. Haltingly, Maeve tried to read it out loud. Italian, she murmured. Only later, when she consulted one of her patients, did she understand its meaning. Please give her the care I cannot. I wish for you both a life of love. The baby's hair was black. Maeve's was red. The baby's eyes were brown. Maeve's were blue. The baby was Italian. Maeve was Irish. They were made for each other. Maeve named the baby Amadora, which meant in Italian, the gift of love. Chapter 37. Many in the neighborhood didn't approve of an unmarried Irish woman raising an abandoned Italian baby. People talked, as they will, and they tisk as they must. Some people were even angry. They said hurtful things. They told Maeve that Amadora didn't belong. They told Maeve she and the baby should leave. Maeve merely smiled, held Amadora close, and waited and hoped. On dark nights when hope was scarce, she would sing an old Irish tune mixed with a newer Italian song that she had learned from a neighbor. The melody was sweet. The words were silly. The effect was always the same, a smile from little Anna, or little Amma. Sure enough, the longer Maeve waited, the kinder people grew. And before long, Amma, as she came to be called, was as much part of our messy garden as all the rest of it. When Amma was old enough to feed Squibbles and his family, she did. When she was strong enough to climb me, she did. And when she was ready to make wishes of her own, she did. Amma grew up steady and honest and kind, like her mother, and had babies of her own, and then grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Eventually, Amma and her husband bought the little brown house and the one right next to it and painted them blue and green. Years later, they purchased a house across the street and began to rent the blue and green houses to other families. The family grew and prospered and argued and failed and loved and laughed. Always and forever, the laughter kept them going. And when Amma's grandson had a little girl, he chose a fine Italian name for her with a fine Irish middle name, Francesca Maeve. Chapter 38. As for me, my reputation grew. Hadn't Maeve's wish come true in the heart of a wish tree? Didn't that mean anything was possible? Of course, his squibbles often reminded me I had nothing to do with it. This isn't a fairy tale, Red, he would say, but people are full of longings, and decade after decade, the hopes keep coming. A blessing and a burden it has been, all those wishes, all those years, but everyone needs to hope. Chapter 39. At long last, I stopped talking. Once the words had spilled out, it was like trying to stop the wind. In the silence that followed, I felt as if the whole world was holding on its breath. I'd broken the rule. Stephen and Samar still stared open-mouthed at me. They looked as rooted to the ground as I was. Neither had uttered a sound while I told my story. The front door to Stephen's house opened. "Stephen?" called his father. "What the heck are you doing, young man?" Stephen leapt to his feet. I come, Dad. Night, Samar." "Night, Stephen," she said. Stephen dashed toward the porch, but stopped halfway. He spun around to look at me. "Thanks," he said in a quizzical voice, using the same tone he might have used if Bongo had just made him pancakes. The door slammed behind him. Samar stood holding her blanket to her chest. "I know I must be dreaming," she said. She headed to her own porch and eased open the door. "I just wish," she added with a smile, "that I didn't have to wake up." Chapter 40. Almost instantly, I regretted what I'd done. I'd broken the rule, the biggie. I'd deliberately spoken to people. And not just words, I'd spoken a river of words. I wasn't like the frog in the mailbox. I hadn't broken the rule accidentally. I'd broken the rule because I wanted something. I wanted to matter. I wanted to do something meaningful before I died. I'd done it for myself. After the shocked babies and their equally shocked parents were safely ensconced in their dens, I admitted my feelings to Bongo. I waited for her to yell at me. Bongo is good at yelling, extremely good. You might even say she has a gift. Why did I do it, Bongo? I murmured. Why? She flew to home plate. She stroked my rough bark with her sleek head. "You did it, my wise old tree, because you had a story to tell." "It was foolish," I said. "I'm not supposed to be foolish." "Not so foolish," Bongo said. "Just hopeful. And everyone needs to hope, Red, even wise old trees." Okay, I'm gonna stop there. We only have, I think, until chapter 51. So I'm going to stop at chapter 41, and then I'll do another video and have my kiddos make their wishes on our little wish tree outside, which just happens to be a hawthorn tree. Wouldn't it be fun if it was a big red oak? Hope you guys are doing well this week. I miss you. I hope you're doing a little bit of reading too. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.